All right, hey guys, today I've got Robert Schulte with us today, founder of the Honey Network. Some have called the Elon Musk. I heard that on a podcast once, and I thought that was pretty creative. The Honey Network currently sells energy honey. It's a product that combines honey with caffeine from green tea extract, so it's pretty cool. It's a nice, healthy boost of energy. Growing up in Florida, Robert has a family beekeeping business. And so just really excited to dive into this unique business and your experience and your journey. So Robert, how's it going, man?
Doing well, Boyega. Really appreciate you having me. I'm doing great.
Awesome. So let's dive into kind of the origin of this family business and also this entrepreneurial spirit that you have and all of the businesses that you've started off of this kind of beekeeping business.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was almost unintentional at the beginning. So my family started beekeeping just for fun about 13, 14 years ago. My mom wanted to get chickens, and my dad very quickly shot down that idea, and they agreed on bees in the middle ground. So we started with one beehive, grew to two. And as we, started to collect a few more at our place in North Carolina, we got very involved in the beekeeping community, both, in North Carolina and in South Florida, where we had beehives at the time. And it became integral to who we were as a family. We loved, collecting honey, and we saw how very close knit the beekeeping community was. And it was something that growing up, I kind of kept as a side thing. I didn't really embrace it. That was just something I did quietly on my own. Didn't talk to my friends a lot about it. But then I got to the University of Florida, and, I had mentioned it and to someone very briefly in conversation, wow, that's awesome. And I was shocked that people, it was something I guess I tried to keep out of my life initially. And then I realized that people were very intrigued by it. And it was a cool way for me as a person to build my brand. And in college, that was something I wanted to do. And a few years before that, our family started selling the honey. We were selling it to baby showers and wedding events. And it was a cool way to, get show other people the honey. But I really started to own the business and, take a lot of pride in it in college when I saw, how I inspired other people. And ultimately the mission in all my future businesses was to get young people excited about beekeeping. And something that's blown my mind always is how the average age of beekeepers is 65, 60 years old. And wow, that's crazy to me, given how important bees are. One in three foods we eat comes from bees and cross-pollination. And if there's one thing I can accomplish through the Honey Network, it's inspiring young people to become more aware of local honey and bees in their local area. And back to the first business, Karen's Bees, that was the family business. We were selling our own family honey, and I was studying engineering at the time, and, was dead set on going to a pretty technical career. And I was really, it was cool to apply some of the engineering stuff I was learning in my classes and technical concepts to the beekeeping business, Karen's Bees. I was using Lean Six Sigma to identify shipping root causes using root cause analysis. I implemented an inventory management system to make sure, we were keeping track of everything that was going on with our honey in different states. Built an e-commerce site, and it was really cool to, apply the tech concepts to business. And that's ultimately what pushed me to go into a more business role in consulting. And that was my big inspiration there. After Karen's Bees, it was kind of weird, a little tension, because I was running the business from Gainesville. I kind of stepped into the role of the business runner, president. And I felt very weird kind of barking orders to my parents, because they were the ones tending the hives down in home when I was at school. So and it was putting a little tension on the family. So I'm okay, I'm going to step away, try something on my own. And that's when I created Pollen Pal, which was a beehive rental service. I was renting beehives from the local Gainesville area to the University of Florida Agriculture Department. They were growing an experimental tangerine plant and needed pollination support. So initially started that, then it became a little too difficult logistically. Then I had another business where I was trying to import honey from across the world with this algorithm I built in R, finding out where the best honey was based on plant sugar data. And that was just a logistical nightmare trying to import stuff from Budapest, from New Zealand, and different parts of the United States. And I kind of felt very lost at that point, but I still knew, and I had that core vision that I wanted young people to get involved with beekeeping. And I knew it was something I was passionate about. And then I had the idea of when I thought about, how, like, what's a way I can touch young people? I thought, I was like thinking like in my life, like what are things I do every day? I drink caffeine, I have coffee, I have tea, and ultimately randomly one day had the idea for caffeinated honey. And I actually sat on it for a while before I mobilized the idea. We are selling caffeinated honey. It's honey infused with green tea extract. I mix the honey with natural green tea extract and other ingredients to create a nice coffee alternative. You don't have to refrigerate it. Students can take it to the library. Honey on its own is a natural muscle growth. It has like amino acids in it that make it stimulates muscle growth. So it's a great, supplement if you want an all natural healthy pre-workout. So we've been piling it in some local gyms as well. And through all these different businesses I've kind of created and failed along the way. Like I've learned small bits and pieces, but what's ultimately kept me going is my, vision that I ultimately want to get young people inspired and caring about beekeeping. So very long-winded answer to kind of my journey along the way. And but it's been exciting, and I'm failing and learning every day as I move forward.
I think it's amazing that you're, I don't mean this in a negative way. You're relatively young, right? And you've got this passion for, what your North Star is, right? You're simply trying to figure out what's the best way to bring young people into kind of this environmental space of understanding the power of bees, right? And how important they are to our ecosystem. And so I love the fact that you're driven by this mission, and really these successes and failures are all just you trying out new ways to solve that one problem. And so, my next question is, because you said a lot of things that are triggering new questions in my head. At what age, if you don't mind me asking, were you when you started kind of the first, branch off business, or maybe Karen's Bees?
That's a great question. So I think the big defining moment was my freshman year of college when, I had been mildly involved with the business, but the summer going into my sophomore year, I was supposed to study abroad in Israel. I had like a joint study session and internship all lined up in Haifa, and I was super, super excited. And 3 days before I was supposed to leave, it got canceled because of there were some safety concerns in the area. So I wasn't able to go, and it kind of it was too late to recruit for another internship. Summer had already started. So I was kind of left. I had a lot of free time on my hands, and I had this grand vision, I'm going to do something awesome my first summer, then my sophomore summer. Then, I had very ambitious goals for myself, and just kind of threw a whole wrench in this situation. So I bought a plane ticket to Chicago and was living with my aunts, cleaning boats in the Chicago harbor just to, have some kind of summer job. And after doing that, I didn't feel fulfilled, and it was a very interesting working environment, like seeing the type of people that I was meeting, like owning these boats. And it was like very inspiring. And I'm like, hearing a lot of the stories about, cause like when I was cleaning their boats, sometimes I got to interact with the owners. And, if you own a boat in Chicago, I know it's usually a sign of some sort of success.
You're doing well.
Yeah, exactly. And getting to talk with them, it just inspired, like that was like the driving factor. Like, I'm like, wow, and a lot of their stories were around stuff they created on their own. And that's when I'm like, wow, maybe I can turn this honey thing into something real. And that's when I started staying up late, teaching myself HTML and CSS to build, the core look of the first website. And then, realizing that wasn't the right way to do it, and then switch to, a no code solution. And that's what kickstarted, the agile method of building the business. And that when I got back to school that sophomore year, I immediately, sent out applications to all my friends to be a part of the ambassador team so we could start selling more honey. And I got like a team of 30 people that, some of them I knew, some of them I didn't know, some went to other schools. And, I had this team that I was managing, starting to help me in, promoting my vision. And that became more clear as the years went on. But I'd say, getting that summer in Chicago, cleaning boats and seeing those people, that was a defining moment. And that's what kind of fueled the fire and has kept me going.
That's so fascinating. So you're coming out, you're 18, 19, right? I'm just kind of, you're 18, 19 with an idea of finding the motivation to be an entrepreneur and try to create something for yourself, trying to pursue this passion. Throughout the years and throughout that time, did you look at these as pivots to the business, or did you look at this as I'm learning new things in my own personal development and kind of career path, how does that interact with this bee business? Because I heard you talk about building a site. You tried something with R, and it sounded like you're developing these skills and you just keep trying to sort of multiply those skills with your problem set and see if you have a new opportunity. Is that kind of a fair assessment?
If I'm understanding correctly, the business has helped me more than it's helped young people get involved with the bees. Like, it's been a very awesome tool to grow me as a person. And it's been my business playground in a sense, where I've if I learned something in school and I wonder how I could actually use this in the real world. Like, I'll spin something off in Karen's bees or pollen pal or whatever it was at the time, and, see if it worked or see if it failed and see how people reacted when I did something. And it was like a cool little sandbox where I messed around with some stuff. And this whole beekeeping narrative really helped me stand out when, in the job recruiting cycle, getting involved on campus. Like, a lot of people found the story interesting, and that was a huge motivating factor for me. Just seeing how, because I initially, wasn't like, oh, like, let's go, the North Star wasn't as clear, but as people were when I would tell them my story and what I'm doing, they're like, wow, that's really awesome. How can I support you? Like, seeing people rush to my support, like, that made me only more and more confident in my North Star. And that was a huge thing. And, having this business and this experience has given me the opportunity to work at a really great company full time. And I know I wouldn't have this job full time if it wasn't for my beekeeping experience and what I had done in my startup, because that had, given me the opportunity to grow a lot of my skills that were needed for the role I'm in now.
Yeah, I think it's so, my mind's kind of processing this because it's such a unique way. Not only is it a unique business and kind of subject matter of business, but I think it's unique because, I've talked to people and they always say, test and learn, try something, figure out if it doesn't work. You've taken the old model of education, use cases, you sit in the classroom, you read about how Microsoft did this and this is what happened to them. You're like taking that and you're playing with a real business and trying that thing. And I think that is probably, it's the real version of immersive learning. And I think that's a really cool and interesting way for you to have developed your skills as an entrepreneur. So one of the things I'll ask is kind of one of our kickoff questions with all the guests is, what was your first action? I'm going to take a little different spin on that question. Is when you started with Karen Bees, could you compare what the first action for that business versus your first action with Honey Network?
I've never really thought about that. And it's kind of a cool comparison. And an interesting thing is, it's hard to think about what the first action is for the Honey Network, because to me, it's always been the same mission. So there's no fine line between the businesses. And when I graduated from Florida, that was about the time I was doing the stuff with bringing in different parts of honey from across the world. And I was just so overwhelmed with the logistical nightmares that I had to put it on pause for a second. And then I had the idea, I actually got a weekend job at Savannah Bee Company, just so I could better learn the market and, like get inside of a real established honey company to see what it was run like. And that's when the concept of the energy honey, I realized that I think I was onto something, and I think it was something worth pursuing. Like I would be sitting, in Savannah Bee getting paid to promote their products. And I would like ask them like, oh, like we possibly might be doing an energy honey in the future. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, oh, it's awesome. So I was like kind of unfairly using the store as an opportunity to kind of test my own product. But I'd say the first action, like the spirit was the same. I think the one for Karen's Bees was a little more monumental, and that was kind of my first step. And I've continued to walk and over time, but yeah, I haven't really, I think, stopped walking in terms of, the vision and what I want to accomplish. The vision's kind of always been aligned, and I didn't want to change that because I feel like I would be lost without my ultimate vision. And like, even today, like I onboarded a team of like 7 consultants from the University of Florida that are helping me with outsourcing manufacturing, marketing, and sales initiatives. And like the one point I kept stressing and what was how important the vision is, this is like, I want young people to know more about bees and know how important they are and get inspired about getting involved in beekeeping. And so whenever I think about, the stuff we're working on, like it always comes back to that. So once I figured that out with Karen's Bees, there was never really another first action. It was always, go into that end goal.
Yeah. Know the North Star and stick to it. I like it. So I think that's a good pivot. Let's talk a little bit, or good transition, I should say, into the business, right? And we can focus primarily on Honey Network. Talk to me about what the biggest challenge has been to overcome, especially in the context of you are developing a formula for a product. You then have to produce manufacturing of that product, and you also have a full-time demanding job. So kind of talk me through that experience.
Yes, there have been a lot of challenges, and I'll say like one more on the broad level that I definitely encountered. I'd say at school first was everything. The expectations are very clearly set for when you're a student. Like, what you need to do really to succeed or get an A in a class. It's not extremely open-ended. Like when you're creating a business, there's no like rubric on how to get to where you want to go. That's something you have to create out of thin air. And it's kind of almost intimate, like scary to think about. Like when you think about like some of the big companies of today, like it's like they created that out of nothing. And that's something that's always blown my mind. And it's always been, that idea has been intimidating to me. And it's something I learned to cope with over time. But I think that was a huge challenge for me initially. But going a little more logistically into the business, a very hard thing about honey is your supply is heavily based on you get your honey from beekeepers. It's not like a software that, you can continue to produce and create. And there's, not too many things that can affect it. Like if there's a horrible winter, like you could possibly lose 10% or 12% of the hives in the country. I might need a fact check on that number, but there's a lot of factors that go into supply. And when we started out, it was our own beehives. And I think it was 2017, our bees in the South Florida got wiped out in the hurricane, and our bees in North Carolina got eaten by bears. Like bears went in and just knocked them down and ate all our honey. So, and like, this is right when I launched the ambassador program, and now I have no honey. And the whole narrative was like, oh, this is a family honey, this is our product. And here I am with 5 gallons left, and that's it. That's the last supply. So that has always been a challenge. And I found a way to get around that is continue to grow my network in the beekeeping community, finding people that are willing to sell their honey. And that's what inspired the name Honey Network. The beekeeping community is extremely tight knit. And I want to expand that network and include younger people and bring down that average age of 65 down to younger people. But supply of honey has always been an issue. It's heavy, very difficult to ship and transport. And that's another great thing about the caffeinated honey is because it comes in straws and it's a single serving. You can ship it very easily, bring it in your backpack. And I was able to kind of learn from that challenge and find out a way where I could overcome that while still having a product that's valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, you said the word community, and I think that's been a recurring theme in a lot of these conversations and episodes that I've had, which is, you know, a lot of this is about building the community. And whether you're a solo entrepreneur in, you know, in the law field, or you're a YouTuber, right? Everyone's been talking about this idea of building that community, and that community will help you succeed. And especially in the beekeeping business, right? It is a pretty tight community, but I love the fact that your business name kind of is inspired by the idea of let's come together and deliver a product that adds value to, you know, not only to the market, but to the longevity of this industry and in our ecosystem.
Yeah, that's true. And I'd be lying if I said another reason we didn't call it the Honey Network is because that was one of the few domain names that was available out of our list. Yeah,
that's also a motivator. I love it.
Yeah.
So okay, so you've worked on the supply problem, right? So you've gotten through to the supply problem. I know in one of our previous conversations you talked about you'd be in your kitchen trying to like create formula, like figure out like how does this work and does this taste good, and you know your roommate would walk in and be like, do I live with a mad scientist? What's wrong with it?
Oh my goodness.
So talk to me about, like, again, like you're a couple years out of college. You know, a lot of your peers are living their best lives. How do you kind of keep focusing, keep grinding, but kind of find that balance to still have some fun, but, you know, make sure that your roommate doesn't get driven crazy with, you know, green tea extract kitchen counter.
Oh man, no, first time he came in. So green tea extract is like a white powder. And the first time I was like making it, it was all over my room, and my roommate walks in and the look on his face, like he had no idea what I was getting myself into. But I've been extremely lucky to be surrounded by people that are extremely supportive of, like, they know how important it is that they know how bad I want it to succeed in my vision, and they will push me in that direction. And like they're a huge part of my success. And that's another, you know, kind of ties back to the whole community and network part.
What of your personal traits do you think have led you down this path of entrepreneurship? Right, in our conversations, you've talked about, you know, your ambition and your motivation, and, you know, wanting to understand what you're not doing well and get really good at it. What are some of these other traits that you've either, you know, through nature or nurture have developed and you see come up in your business on a day-to-day basis?
I'm sure we both have been blessed with amazing mentors, and growing up had a lot of people that pushed me in great directions. And one of the most rewarding things for me was when I first got to serve as a mentor to someone. I wasn't the mentee. I got to mentor someone, and the feeling I had when that person looked up to me and saw value in the things I was doing and the advice I was giving, that was like a very rewarding feeling. And that's kind of what pushed me to gain experience to be able to give that back to other people. So that I was reflecting on this the other day, and I think a huge driving factor in why I, you know, want to grow something of value and like learn random things that might not even be relevant, you know, in a few years. And just to, you know, get my hands in as many different experiences as I can, whether that's new businesses or new initiatives. I want to be able to, you know, like help people and tell them that story. And I didn't realize that was the thing I wanted until recently. Like when I think back on my fondest moments, and like when people come to me, like younger students asking, you know, like they have a business in flight that they're trying to launch, and like they're admiring the things I was doing. Like that's the most rewarding feeling I've ever had. So I think that has been a huge driver in wanting to succeed and do more and gain more experiences, because I want to be able to give that back to people, because that's as much as I'm focused on the business and doing good for the beekeeping community, I want to be able to give back to, my own personal network and the people I come and meet along the way.
Yeah, no, I think that that's incredible. And I really do believe, I do believe at the core, the most rewarding feeling in life is knowing that you've been helpful. That's the name of the
Yeah,
podcast,
be
right?
helpful.
It's really, at the end of the day, I think that that is really the motivation, the underlying motivation for a lot of things that we do in our lives. Whether you're, whether it's your ego that says, I want that euphoric feeling of, I've been impactful, regardless, the fact that you made that impact on someone's life, I think is incredibly important. So let's, I'm curious, especially as we've talked about how closely knit your entrepreneurial journey and your kind of personal development and also your career development have been. I'm curious to see, like, what does Honey Network look like in 5 years?
That is an amazing question. And I think about it a lot. And I have to force myself to keep thinking about it because it's very easy to get caught up in, what's the next step. But now that I've taken a few steps, I need to, look that far down the road. My dream is to be in a big retail store. Like if I can walk into a store and see my product there, a store that I had never been to before, like that will be like that is as big as I can dream right now. And I know it's attainable and I know there's even things you can go after that, but like that has always been a dream of mine to walk in a store and to, like see a product on my shelf, maybe even see someone put it in their cart. Like that is, my end goal. And I think in 5 years, it's a realistic possibility given my plans with manufacturing. Like we talked about earlier, I'm currently, everything's been running out of my apartment. Like I'm experimenting with the flavors and like I'm tasting caffeine at like 9 in the evening, staying up all night. And that's not sustainable. Like if I want to be in a store, I can't do that. So the next step is to, find a co-packer to help out there. And that's what this consulting team's helping me with at the moment. Another important thing in 5 years or at some point in the future, my company is growing the team. And I, if I can provide another person with a place to work, and that's going to be necessary as I continue to grow, I won't be able to balance everything myself. So expanding my team, like being the person to run a team, like I've found so much joy in that, being the leader of a group. Not because, being the leader's fun. I like being, looked up to in a sense, but being able to see other people come together and succeed and to play a part in that is awesome. So would love to have, motivated people be a part of the team. So 5 years from now, I want to be on a shelf and have a bigger team. That's the ultimate goal.
I like it. I like it. And I like the fact that they're both attainable, right? I think that I think that not only is it attainable, I think that there is a balance of dreaming big, right? And dreaming for the stars, because if you don't hit that goal, where you land is still going to be exponentially higher than you could have ever imagined. But I also think that there's the power of small victories, right? And saying like, look, I want to get to this goal, and everything's momentum, because you're going to start snowballing, right? And so you're going to find yourself in, not only it's going to be the store that you recognize, the store that you frequent and you have a relationship with them, but then all of a sudden it's going to turn to this store. Then it's going to be in Target, and you're going to be out of town and walk into Target and be like, is that my product? Right? Like it's going to slowly snowball. And I think that there's wisdom in having, really attainable goals, and, not, while still keeping an eye towards kind of your end goal and big picture. So I do really like that.
Appreciate it. Great question.
So thank you. Let's talk a little bit about the personal journey and evolution through this process, right? You've been an entrepreneur since you were a teenager, right? So I'm very interested on kind of that evolution, as a person, and what pros have you seen in terms of your maturation and kind of the skills you develop and the opportunities it's presented? But then also, what have been some of the things that you've been disappointed with yourself, right? You've looked back and you're like, man, like I could have done that differently. Like, talk to me about the ups and downs of that journey.
That's another great question. The Honey Network has helped me grow and mature in a lot of ways I didn't know I needed. And a lot of the stuff I did initially with the business wasn't in definitely not in best practice. Like when I gave answers earlier, it probably came off that, I had this, well-oiled business going throughout college. And in reality, it was very far from that. And I was operating without a business license for probably far too long. And I was kind of asking for, I know that the phrase, what is it? Don't ask for forgiveness. Don't ask for permission.
Yeah. Yeah.
So something like that. But I sometimes did that, I think, a little too far. Like I would just, if I had an idea, like I would do whatever it took to have the idea right. Not saying I did anything like extremely unethical, but when I worked at Savannah Bee Company, I needed, so that opened my eyes to, like a big name honey supplier. I was still having the issues finding honey, and they had amazing honey that was coming from Europe that I wanted to use for some of my honey products. And I, like, as soon as I figured out like what I wanted to do, I like quit Savannah Bee. And then like, they're like, you can't create a honey business within 1 year. Like you can't really do anything. So I'm like, all right, that's fine. Whatever. I like created a bunch of like fake email accounts, like under like different names, just so I could like buy wholesale from them in the meantime. And that was just, it like probably would have never been an issue because it wasn't really competing. I was like giving them business actually, but I was just like, I needed to get going. And I think my definition of like what was an accomplishment had changed throughout the years, both personally and professionally. Like when I created the website and launched it in my freshman year, I'm like, this is the greatest thing. Like I did it. I have a business. It's online. And I got like 2 orders in the first 2 months, one from my mom and one from me, because I was testing it out. And I thought, having a website would be the ultimate way to scale growth. But ultimately, like that's what opened my eyes to so many other things in business besides just having, the solution there. Like I had even considered marketing, and that's a huge part of the vision now with the Honey Network. And that's something I learned with the business. And personally, like I learned, I need to market myself, and just because I have the skills doesn't mean people are going to come find me when it comes to job recruiting. Like I need to let people know I'm out there. I need to, start building my own network. So it was cool to have that business because I learned a lot from it and from its failures throughout the years. And that was like an amazing gift to me that I now looking back on, like at the time, I'm like, oh, like, why am I even doing this? Like I'm half, I'm only putting in half effort. Like it's not even real. But now when I look back, like the stuff I've learned over the years has been invaluable to, the stuff I'm doing now. And like, when I think about when I'm like planning out my goals and what I want to do, like not only do I know more about honey, but I know more about, what failures I've made and how to avoid those. And I don't know, fail at something else new.
I appreciate you sharing that, and hopefully you didn't incriminate yourself, but tough joke.
If anyone from Savannah Bee is watching this, no, you're not.
No, I think I really appreciate that because there's a benefit to ignorance, right? There's a benefit to just, I'm going to go. And I'm going to do whatever I got to do to figure it out and try something. And so there's undoubtedly a power in that. And I think that learning how to reel that in to the appropriate level, I think is one very important thing. But then on the other side of it, I think it's really important to be able to realize and recognize, like, just because you have an idea and you execute on that idea doesn't mean it's going to work. right? And that I love we built a website, or I built a website, and now it's going to be, everyone's going to come and it's going to be the best thing ever. And then you get slapped in the face and no one buys it, right?
I was shocked. I like could not believe it. I'm like, what is going on? Why am I not a millionaire yet? I have an e-commerce site. I should be a millionaire.
I think that there's that humbling experience, to your point, is what allows you to take those bruises and move on to the next thing. And to be able to just kind of do that, over and over, and just kind of learn and take those punches, I think is going to be super, super beneficial to the honey network as it grows. Because I think that, and we've had this conversation about the energy honey, it's a freaking awesome product, right? I've tried it. It's super helpful. I sent you a text when I went to the gym, and I was like, I think it could replace my Gatorade shoes. It's an awesome product. I think, to your point, from a marketing standpoint, this is where, especially in today's business environment, I think that's where you're probably going to start having the most fun with it, right? Because you got a good logo, you got a good site, you got a good product. All right, cool. Now, how do you get everybody bought into not only the idea that honey can be an energy source when you've got green tree extract, but then buying into this idea of, I think you guys don't realize how important bees are to our ecosystem. And buying into that vision and advocating for that mission. I think I'm excited to see how that evolves and how that journey goes, how you evolve as a founder and as an entrepreneur through that journey too. I think it's going to be really cool.
That's something that's on the top of my mind. And I appreciate your comments there. Initially, I had a hard time connecting selling honey with my North Star, my vision of getting young people involved. And it started off as like, I'll just donate a portion of my profits to, at the time, the Xerxes Society, which was doing honeybee research. And I'm like, okay, I'll check that box. Like, that's it. But when I think about from an impact perspective, what that was really doing, I don't think it was a very minimal, impact on my actual vision. So I need to think a lot more creatively now. And I think the product I've created is more catered towards younger people, hustlers, young professionals, given it's caffeinated. I think, we see a lot of these energy drinks saturating the market right now. And I think this is something a little different, but it sheds a lot of light on the beekeeping community. And I'm hoping to do more of that through social media. So, but it was initially a hard challenge to connect, this big grand vision that I've had with the product. And I had a really, really hard time with that. Kind of interacting with like the old beekeeping community. So quick tangent. When I was doing the beehive rental business with Paul and Pal, the one I had created, I found this other company that was kind of doing what I wanted to do exactly. So I'm like, let's just join forces. So I worked for them when I started consulting full time. I would like wake up. Essentially, I was doing cold calls to beekeepers across the state. So I would do that from, a few hours before I started work full time. And it was a lot of work. And most of the calls I was having with these beekeepers, they were very like closed off to the idea. Like it was a lot of hangups, a lot of, negative stuff on the phone. And that was the hardest point for me, because at the time there was like a transitionary period between right before the Honey Network started. And I felt like I was talking to beekeepers and they were saying negative things to me. Like, we don't want to rent our beehives. And like, I felt like I was being attacked by the beekeeping community and being pushed away by the thing that I, found that I felt like I was identifying myself with. So it took a while for me to realign that, like, okay, I want to bring younger people involved here, because older people younger people are more willing to adapt to technology. And when you look at the beekeeping field and the agriculture industry as a whole, I think they're definitely lagging behind a little bit in technology adaptation to, monitor beehive health. And beekeeping is, a kind of a traditional thing, and it's an amazing thing. But I think technology could do a lot for the field, maybe even at a small scale. But that's why I'm hoping to get younger people passionate and involved about it. Because most of the, bee farms across the country are, family owned, and they've been going generation to generation. But it would be cool if we could get a breath of fresh air in these industries, just like we're starting to see in agriculture and a lot of traditionally, stable industries. Like we're seeing a lot of startups disrupt them. And not that I'm trying to disrupt them. I'm trying to complement what's already happening with technology that could be a win-win for everyone.
Right. And hence the Elon Musk. I like it. So let's talk a little bit about that, especially, you're a part of this community, right? Your family's, in this community for over a decade, and you're coming up with new innovative products, new innovative ways for this industry to work. And you're having this feeling of being pushed away and denied, right? To not only something that you love and you're passionate about, but also something that you truly are a part of. If you don't mind, talk to me about what that self-talk, that inner conversation with yourself has been in terms of like, no, like this is an opportunity for this community, and not taking it personally and turning it into kind of a new opportunity or a new way to engage.
A big catalyst in that internal discussion was my love for the product I had created. I don't think if it wasn't for the caffeine honey and seeing how other people loved it as much as I did, it would have been a lot harder or taken me a lot longer to, get back on board and say, you know what, like, this is what I care about. This is what I'm passionate about. And when I think, and then I was reflecting on my time when I was doing like the Beehive brokerage calls. I wasn't, necessarily, I was calling and trying to do business with them. I wasn't telling them the story of me, Robert. I was telling them the sales pitch of the company I was working for. I was essentially cold calling, and it was hard. I think when I was just talking to beekeepers and getting negative things, I took it personally. Yeah. But once I took a step back and realized like that I wasn't really I'm sure if I called them back and, maybe told them about what I'm doing with the Honey Network, they would probably be a little more interested in hearing about what I was doing. So it took taking a step back to realize that that's what, I shouldn't take that personally. And, but a big thing was, being passionate about the product I created, and think like the fact that the energy honey like solves so many logistical problems was like a breath of fresh air. It was like a lightning strike. I'm like, wow, like I can ship it for cheap. I don't need that much honey. The margins are great. It was like the kind of like the light bulb. And I've had, a lot of light bulbs that have gotten broken over the years, but I was like very excited about this one, and it came at a great time, right when, I graduated, and, I felt like I had a lot of free time when I left school, because I had a lot of things going on there, and it's not like you get asked to go out and get drinks on a Tuesday night. So I had a lot of free time once I started working full time. So I just kind of hit it and ran with it. But yeah,
I like it. So I'm gonna another question popped in my head, and when you were talking about technology, and you mentioned, you're an engineer by your education, and as an entrepreneur, especially when you start off, you're in every single department, right? And I know that one of your goals is to grow a team. You've got some consultants that are helping you, specifically on manufacturing. Talk to me about your experience of having to learn sales, having to learn marketing, having to learn accounting, operations. Like, how's that experience been for you, and has it been overwhelming?
I'll start with accounting, because a lot of, the basic like business fundamentals, I'm going to exclude sales and marketing because those are a little more subjective, but those I picked up. I didn't really realize I picked them up till I did. Like I just started out, creating a simple Excel file, just like tracking some stuff. And then I realized like that wasn't cutting it. And before I knew it, I had like a common commercial out of the box accounting software that I was using. And I was like, wow, like it just kind of happened naturally. Yeah. And yeah, as an industrial engineer, I took like one accounting class, but I didn't really learn a ton from it. And I think a great point about that question, an important thing to think about is, yes, it's important to learn everything, but you ultimately need to remember like where you add the most value and where you can bring people in to add value. So marketing, like I have like a great vision, but when it comes to like execution and creating content, like that's something I'm not strong in and never been strong in. Like if you saw the old Instagram we had for Karen's Bees to the Honey Network, it was disgusting. And I thought it was like the greatest thing at the time. It was like the old logo we have. I wonder if I have a picture of it, but I knew the biggest thing like in mastering the business was like learning what I was good at and where I could provide value, and then where I could bring in other people to find value. Because if you ask anyone for advice on any part of your business, like you could hear a million different things. So I ultimately had to make the decision. What are the things that I know I want to make the decisions on, or I know I'm good at, and what are the things that I want to trust, like bring in other people and trust their opinion. It's kind of like a combination, and without losing the focus of your vision. So like when it came to operations, I felt like I knew that a little bit better. I knew how to make the product. Like that is something I kept under my belt. Now when I'm going to outsourcing, like I need other people involved with that. Marketing, I had a vision for what I wanted to do, but I needed some help with the execution. So I trusted someone with the execution of the marketing. With sales, I had an idea of where I wanted to go, but I'm getting advice and support on actually making those next steps to get certified to be, sold in a commercial retailer. And that's something I totally could have figured out on my own, but I had to make the decision to spend more time on like the value add tasks and making sure I'm aligning everything to the vision. So I learned a lot of those things along the way, not really knowing I did. And like I like for marketing, I like bought a book, read a marketing book, and like there's ways to teach yourself. But I think the most important thing that I had to learn was to figure out how to filter through advice I got from people I spoke with. Because, you would think by talking to 100 people about who had run successful honey businesses that you would know enough, but they probably all had their own different paths and they'd give you 100 different pieces of advice. And you probably feel more overwhelmed than when you started. So being able to kind of filter and pick, oh, that's something cool that they did. I think this could really benefit what I'm doing. Being able to learn that was the biggest driver, I think, for us and for me as an individual.
No, I think that's so key, being able to filter through the advice and what's going to work specifically for you. I guess my last kind of conversational question before we jump into some quick hitters. Talk to me about mentors. Talk to me about your advisory team with people that you do bounce ideas and questions off of. How did you find these people? And also how many people, right? You just talked about filtering through advice. How many people are in that kind of advisory group for you?
I don't think I could draw like a solid line around it because, there's people that randomly pop in my life that give me amazing advice. Like my roommate last week connected me with a friend of a friend who runs this sauce company called Yellowbird. And I got some of the best advice on scaling that I've ever gotten, like better than I had ever heard from some of my mentors that have been my mentors for years. But like a few crucial people that kind of define the role of mentorship for me. Like my first formal mentor was Devin Phillip, my freshman year of school of college. He showed me how to embrace my passion. And I saw how much like he did that. And he made me realize how important it was to do that and how it would benefit me. And I attribute that lesson to him. Another mentor, Trey Linazzo, taught me the value of excellence and doing good work. And he showed me it was possible to accomplish basically anything with what you're given. Like he went to UF, also did industrial engineering, went into consulting. And I'm like, wow, like I want to do something like that. And, UF's becoming a better school, but at the time it was hard to get a job as an engineer in consulting. And he, seeing him do that, seeing how confident he was, like he showed me that, that was possible. And then another amazing mentor I had, Sri Tarasia, he was my first internship supervisor at JM Family in South Florida. And, we would just sit and have talks in his office, and he, like, as soon as the internship, like we haven't stopped talking ever since the internship ended, and we catch up, on like a bi-monthly basis, once every 2 months. And he has been so supportive of me in the business, and he runs his own business too. And, we've been like helping. It's cool. The coolest thing is being able to help your mentor when like your mentor like can get something out of you. I feel like a lot of people think it's like kind of like a transactional thing where like, oh, because in school you get like assigned mentors and like, oh, like I'm your mentor, I need to like tell you how to do things. Like when your mentor is willing to listen to you and get value from your own experiences, like that is like that's something amazing. And when I think back to all the amazing mentors I've had, it's not really a mentorship. It's, you're both learning from each other. And even though one person may be older or be giving more advice, like being able to give that person some any kind of value is awesome. And I'm sure there's so many people that I'm failing to miss. Like a lot of my very close college friends were all the same age, but I consider them some of my greatest mentors. They've been there for me, supporting me through the product development process.
I love that you're, I love kind of what you started with. There's no clear line of delineation on mentors and advisors, right? There are, key people that you point to about big decisions, or they have domains of expertise. But I love the fact that as you're learning to filter through all the advice, it's allowing you to increase the capacity of advice that you bring in, right? You're taking in advice from your friends, you're taking advice from colleagues, collaborators, business, customers, partners, whomever. But at the same time, you're fine tuning that engine of what's going to apply to me, what's going to work for me. And I think that that's a very, very powerful skill as an entrepreneur. So let's do some quick hitters, and feel free to elaborate. They don't have to be quick answers, but
let's do it.
But name 2 or 3 books that you'd recommend to other entrepreneurs.
That's a good question. I'm going to go with the Tim Ferriss books, The 4-Hour Work Week, 4-Hour Body, 4-Hour Chef. I personally really respond well to the way he writes, and I love how concise yet and to the point his lessons are. I've really enjoyed his books, and the 4-Hour Work Week is a famous one. I'm sure a lot of people listening have, if not, have already read it, have probably heard about it. It's the whole concept is being able to turn your 40-hour work week into a 4-hour work week. And there's just a lot of tips on how to be more productive. And that was like an eye-opening book for me. I remember I read it senior year in college, and like I turned down going out to a bar to like finish reading the book because I was so into it. Like that was the level of how invested I was. And I love to go out with friends. So I hope that says something. But one other point on that, on the book topic, I feel like good about myself when I read. Like when I read, I feel like I'm doing something good for myself. But I started to realize I wasn't really like retaining a lot of the stuff I was reading. Like I would like blow through 100 pages on a flight, like just to read, and to say I could finish a book by the end of the month. And it's very good to have these book goals. But when I thought back to like, oh, I read that book, but I like don't remember what the big lessons were. So something I've been doing for the past year is writing book reports. And as childish as that sound, like I have like a corkboard on my wall where I'll like write maybe even like 8 bullet points of, the key things that I took away from that book. And I do it like as I'm reading the book, and I'll like put it up somewhere just so I like make it, I read that book and this is what I got out of it. Like this author had to convey this message to me and this is what I took away. And maybe you don't always do that. Maybe you don't, get something, or you don't really align well to the author's message, which is totally fine. Books are art. So I would challenge the people reading to try that. It's an interesting exercise, and it makes you, when you read it like intently thinking that you need to like take something out of it, it kind of changed the way I read. I actually went back and read a few more books that I had already read, and it was like almost like a very different experience. So challenge for the month.
I think that's so smart, and I'm actually going to try that because I've started, working to pick up the habit of reading more books. And I shouldn't say that I don't like reading. I actually like listening. So with my Audible membership, I'm just kind of running through books. And nice. I think you're right. Like sometimes the theme, I tend to read a lot of self-help books. So, and of course, business books. So a lot of the themes blend, and they merge. And I'm like, oh, was that about from that book or this one? I love the idea of, just sitting down and be like, okay, what are the 8 things that I took away from the book? And for some reason, I really like the number 8 rather than like 3, because 3, it's easy. I could just kind of jot down 3 things.
Yeah. You could eat very easily. Yeah.
But like knowing that I have to write down, a significant number of things that the author was trying to convey, I think is a good way to make sure that it's cemented, and then posting it somewhere that I can see it later. I'm definitely going to steal that from you. Moving forward.
You got it. It's not easy, but it is a good exercise. And I feel like, we read to learn. And I think by doing that, you're learning more. Yeah. So even if you don't read as much, like I've altered my reading goals for the year I've decreased it just so I can absorb the information better. And I'm also a little more selective about what I read now because I want to get the full experience of the book.
Awesome. All right. Next question. What question should I ask our next guest?
That is an amazing question. You know what I'm going to say to that? I have such good faith in you as a host. And when I've listened back to all your previous episodes, you always ask the question that I don't know I want to hear. So I'm going to leave it to you. It's, and I'm a decent podcast consumer myself. And I'm a huge fan of Be Helpful and Tough to Say, which is another podcast that I had been on. And I really listened to you guys both exclusively. I listen to all your episodes, but I also listen to other podcasts. Yeah. But I love the way you moderate and flow the conversation. And I don't want to throw a question in there to mess it up.
Well, that's very flattering. And I appreciate that. That is, I don't call myself a professional interviewer. I'm just figuring this thing out, but it's just having good guests like you to have fun conversations and unique backgrounds and experiences that I can honestly just, pick and prod, because you're doing, a ton of things that I just didn't have the guts to do or the opportunity to try to explore it in such a way. So
no, man, you're doing great. You were interviewing George Davis Jr. and he said something so profound and a great answer to your one of questions. And I was sitting, just soaking it in. I'm like, wow, what a great answer. And then you asked a follow-up to that. I'm like, that is such a good question. I need that is a great, I wish I had thought to ask him that, because I was just so blown away by the last statement. So no, huge fan of the pod, and it's, it's an honor to be here.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Robert, this has been amazing. Thank you so much. I literally have kind of all of my notes. The light's kind of throwing it off, but it is a full piece of paper from a hotel lobby, our hotel notepad. But no, this is incredible. Thank you so much. And appreciate it, man.
Hey, Boyega, the pleasure's all mine. Really appreciate you having me, and can't wait to hear the other episodes you have coming out in the near future. I'm a huge fan of the podcast.
I appreciate it.